Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, a show for people who are obsessed with all things marketing. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, certified master marketer, international keynote speaker, workshop facilitator, and the author of a new book called Identity Marketing. Each week, I interview rainmakers from brands big and small to pull back the curtain on what's actually working in marketing today. We dig into real life wins and losses and their very real consequences, and get into spicy discussions of marketing controversies and opposing philosophies. This is the real marketing thought leadership you've been looking for in your ears on demand. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. Welcome back to the Rainmaker Podcast. You know what topic should never not be spoken about? It's like you can't talk about this enough, is leadership. Listen, Simon Sinek, Brene Brown, Adam Grant, like there's been leadership giants that have been around for now decades, and yet it is still the number one issue in the workplace is the lack of quality leadership. And so I'm really grateful to have Megan Kuiper on the podcast because not only did she work at Target for 21 years in literally going into stores and Ted Lassoing the organizations team by team. Now she, in an independent capacity, is also now doing that with different organizations and individuals. And so I was really excited to bring her onto the podcast and have this conversation because, like, why is this still like an epidemic? Why is there still a leadership epidemic that's occurring despite the incredible amount of experts and resources available to everybody? And so I was grateful to hear her answer to that, which I thought was really interesting. So please welcome my guest, Megan. Megan, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so pumped to be here.
I'm really excited to have you as well. It's very rare, I feel like, that I meet individuals who have been with organizations for double decades, like a long time. And so when I met you in Mexico at a peer mastermind that you and I are both a part of, and you're like, yeah, I was at Target for 21 years. I'm like, damn, like, that's amazing. I did not have that same corporate experience. I felt myself getting itchy around 2 years in where I'm like, unless I get a new role or a new responsibility or something meaty, I'm getting bored. And so millennial of me to say that, but it was true. I started getting itchy. So like, how the freak did you stay in any organization, let alone Target, for so long? Take me to that.
Yes. Well, I did shoot out of the womb with a lot of energy and a lot of creative juices flowing through me. And I really fell into the original interviews in Minnesota with Target when I was 21 years old. And I just felt like their culture was me. Like it was a space that I really felt like I could always be my authentic self and leverage my gifts naturally while still like learning the Target way. But it was just really inspiring to really be infused in this company that wanted me to be me and dress how I
Mhm.
wanted to and get to like leverage my energy and all that. So that's how the journey began. And it's really fun how, like, I do believe your 20s, you're just figuring everything out. But I do feel like it was such a
True.
blessing to like find that match early on. So
Mhm.
um, it was a great fit.
That's
And I was
cool.
really loving this opportunity to like move around the Midwest to make an impact. I just felt super empowered early on.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. Well, when you say the Target way, it's like the DNA. What does that mean?
I really feel like what you see on the commercials
Yeah.
and the fun and the cleverness and well, you're the marketing guru here, so I feel like it's very aligned. Like it feels similar to what you
That's
see,
cool.
and I loved it's all this like quest to always help evolve what's going on in the world to match like the
Mm-hmm.
merchandise we had or the messaging we were
Mm-hmm.
giving out, and I just felt like they were so clever at um, helping us be that to the world, but also treating the team that way and being really relevant. Relevant is the word I'm thinking of.
That's a
Um,
good one.
and so it was fun being a part of that. And my role was to go around stores all over the Midwest and turn them around culturally and operationally. And it was so neat to be a part of that culture, but also get to have my own authenticity in each building I went into. And
Mm-hmm.
they honored what I brought to it. And it wasn't like they
Mm-hmm.
gave me a how to, it was, I got to really feel like I almost had my own business, which felt really neat too. So that I
That's
didn't feel
cool.
always like super controlled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, okay, and this has certainly informed the work that you do now independently because you literally help teams and organizations with culture.
Yes.
But so when they moved you around to improve culture, what does that mean? Like, what was happening? And you don't have to disclose which store did
Yeah.
what, but like, what drama or chaos or even lack of pulse? Like, culture can also be just boring. Like, what were you walking into? What were some of those common strifes? And I'm really curious because you've been doing it for so long, if the issues then still resemble the leadership issues that you're encountering today,
Mhm.
or has that changed? So tell me what you're walking into, and then we'll do a compare and
Okay.
contrast.
Yes. So definitely, I always believe like the team, like when you're looking at a triangle, like the team is the base and it's like everything starts and stops there. And if there's
Mhm.
any disconnects within the team, like not feeling engaged,
Mhm.
supported, problem performers not being managed, any of those things, you can't even have sustainable operations or
Mm.
great guest experience or any of those things. So the common thread was the team was disengaged. But the biggest thing was missing is a feedback culture. And that's one of the things I'm bringing to
Oh.
companies right now is this idea that when we encourage feedback up, down, sideways, every level, it creates this space where everyone feels like that they belong and that their voice
Mhm.
matters. And it also helps
Oh my gosh, that's so
for
funny.
like offered this accountability culture then that blossoms. um but usually the lack of feedback culture and accountability culture were the two main team issues that were going on. And so those were things that I implemented immediately. And my nature, like I said already, is to be very energetic, so I did it in this really engaging, energetic way that everyone got on board so fast that I always joke that like I feel like by the times I left my teams, they would literally dig up the store and move it across the street if I needed them to. They were so engaged. And the other piece that I teach everywhere now is I helped them start dreaming again. And I really brought this, and this is what I'm doing still, is I always wanted to make sure I knew what everyone's life goals were beyond target,
Yeah.
and when someone sees that a leader cares about
100.
all that, it's just, it all starts flowing together. So the biggest obstacle was getting the team on board, but I did it through leveraging a feedback framework that I've created, an accountability culture, and then bringing dreams to the workplace.
That's actually really cool. I had a boss when I worked at Entrada, which was like a property management software company for 4 years, and his name was John Solden, and he was my our chief revenue officer, I believe, one of the chiefs. And I remember in a one-on-one, he asked me, he's like, "Do you ever, what do you want to do one day beyond like this?"
Yes.
Like, pointing at the walls. I'm like, "Well, I want to write a book one day." Ha! And here
Fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he asked me, like, what book would you, about, being a woman in the workplace, but always being the youngest, because I was always the youngest in some leadership room of
Sure.
some kind. And so he started at like it was almost more like, tell me more, like this or this. And I felt his sincerity. And it kind of caught me off guard because I'm like, is this like a test? The fact that he's like, even like, am I going to be in trouble? Would this have ramifications if I divulge that I have secret aspirations besides the corporate ladder within the walls of this
Yeah.
organization? And I still text him to this day. I still view him as somebody very instrumental and like mentorship in my life. And it's because he showed interest in the complete version of me, not
Yes.
just in the 9 to 5 version of
Absolutely.
me, which I thought was really meaningful.
I know. And I can relate to that. That goes such a long way, and it doesn't take any talent. It just takes a big heart and treating us like humans. And
Yeah.
the one of my best bosses I had before I made the big move on to entrepreneurship, I had started doing all I was doing while I was at Target. Like I was like, I'm gonna do both to see that, to kind of gather evidence, like, is there a need? And so anyway, I put out to the universe I wanted to do keynote speaking, and I was hired for my first keynote. Like I remember the grocery aisle, I was standing in at Target when I got the text from someone saying, can you be our keynote in Vegas? And I
Oh,
was like, yes. And that was before I even knew you like have a discovery call and like all the things. Anyway, that was really special because my team knew and my boss knew that my dream was to be a keynote speaker.
to be a speaker.
And it happened, I secured it in a grocery aisle at Target. But I remember, I mean, it was amazing. It was the Aria on a big stage. And I, that morning getting ready, like I got all these Target texts saying, you got this. Like, and and
Oh,
and of course, my children and all that too. But like, it was just so neat that like my boss for Target was cheering me on, like similar to what you were just saying.
Outside of your role
And
for Target.
we're still connected, and she honored and
Yeah.
celebrated me moving on. It wasn't like, oh gosh, you're quitting. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
so
Okay.
good.
It's do you watch Ted Lasso?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you said feedback, I was like, one of the first things that Ted did was he did the comment box and then like, that guy Jamie put like gum in it or
Yeah.
something, but then Roy, it ended up being Roy or somebody, but like they complained about the snacks
Yeah.
in the vending machines and the shower pressure sucked. And it's like the conclusion of one of the early episodes is like they go into the shower and the shower pressure has been fixed. And it was like a little
Yes.
bit of the
Just like
turning
this one.
of
Yes.
the tide
Yes.
in a relationship, but also a culture that obviously now the whole show is like famous
Yeah.
for Ted Lasso, right?
Right.
And the Lasso way.
Yes.
So when you said Target way, like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
you should play that clip in some of your workshops
Oh,
because it's so good, and people love that
oh
show.
my gosh, that's a great idea.
Um, but feedback is really interesting. Sometimes I wish, like, I make this joke all the time, like, where in my church can I put feedback? like, where can I, like, there are some organizations where there is either zero feedback mechanism of any
Mhm.
kind, or, which I think is even more deflating, they have one for face, but it's
Yeah.
worthless. Like, you submit feedback and they don't actually care. They're just doing it to check a box, an HR box or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
So when you say helping organizations actually live and breathe and implement feedback on all levels, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. Well, I love that idea of integrating that Ted Lasso, because it's actually as simple as that.
It's so cute. It's such a
Oh,
great
I'm
example.
excited. On a side note, my team would say, like, I don't watch shows very good. I just don't sit still. So, but they're like, you have to watch this, Megan, because you're Ted Lasso. I'm like, I am. And so, anyway, I got Apple TV when that came out just to watch
So
that.
good.
But anyway, um, so I present it in this like fun framework that I've created. But number one, I help everyone break down this like idea that feedback is scary to give or receive.
Yes.
And I think our whole world like needs that a little bit sometimes. And I think our nature and companies' natures, even like I'm working with like C-suite leaders and SVPs,
Right.
like we want to put flowers around feedback and not be
Mm,
explicit. And our influence is so great when we foster that it's healthy to give me tough feedback as the leader. And like, I want to know what's going on. I know in my roles that teams don't feel comfortable to like come right to me. So I knew that all these layers of leadership needed to be fostering this feedback culture. So
mhm.
first part was like really like breaking that stigma that feedback's a bad thing or you're getting
Yeah.
coached is a bad thing. And I always tie a lot to sports, but because I have a sporty family and all that, but like,
I love it. I love
our
sports
favorite
analogies.
coaches are the ones for me that were like, get on the line. But like, I got feedback up the wazoo, but I like respected them so much. And then when I
Yes.
delivered, I mean, the recognition and all that came with it was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Um, so anyway, and then the next thing is really making feedback as this like collaborative act as a leader. Like when
Mm,
we don't just give direction and dictate and all that all the time and actually approach feedback as like more of a question asking
mhm.
opportunity, that's when like the person on the other end actually feels heard and feels like, hold on, I get to be a part of the how of whatever problem we're having or
Mhm.
whatever mountain we're climbing. So my framework is called the collaborative feedback framework because it's very collaborative, and it then moves to like this opportunity to give direct, like direct behavioral feedback. Like we can't miss the step as the leader to give very direct feedback about what you're seeing, and then some guidance on how to move forward. And then the last piece is like so powerful, but what is like the action step that is going to be taken after we leave this conversation?
Right.
And I
Right.
think so many times feedback is perceived as like just sharing your opinions, but actually it's like, oh no, like let's make this brief plan together so that,
Into something.
yes, to something.
Mhm.
And so much can get accomplished
Mhm. Mhm.
and it feels healthy. It's not,
Mm.
but I
No,
would,
it's productive.
yeah. And so that's like one of the biggest gaps I would see at the Target stores. And I'm still kind of back to your original question, seeing. Um, but really, when we go, I believe when we get over this hump, it really creates this like trust and genuine connection
Mhm.
across leadership levels that again everyone belongs and every voice matters. and so much can get accomplished, I feel like.
It makes me well, so it's been a minute since I've been in a corporate structure myself, but I think most common, it's like your annual
Yes.
review.
And some places I'm learning don't even have that anymore somehow.
Yeah. So once a year, which is like like that's kinda it's really hard. It's like having a New Year's resolution. You're gonna have a resolution for 365 days,
Yeah.
like, versus like, let's make a plan for the week, the
Yes.
month, the month, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
a little bit just a little bit more consumable of a time frame that you can actually see some net positive result and praise because of your intentional adjustments.
Yes.
365 is
Yes.
hard. That's a long period to wait whether or not that you've done something. And then, oh, it's by the way, it's tied directly to your compensation increase.
Yes.
And then you feel like they don't give you the praise so they can avoid the rate, you know?
Yes.
So you're telling me that even though the norm would dictate once a year, you're even going into organizations where they don't even exist anymore?
I mean, reviews have,
Yikes.
yeah, or this idea of like, I mean, I did create a lot of this. It wasn't like Target asked me to do this consistent. I was like what worked for me and I saw success in. But I one of the hows of implementing this process is having predictable times where you're having touch points with your team. That I mean, who doesn't love a predictable leader? I mean,
Yeah. Ooh.
and I just loved working with ones that I knew exactly, how they operated, what their expectations were, and when I was going to have my touch points with them. Because then it was just so conversational to have feedback so frequently. But so anyway, in my buildings, I had weekly touch points with my executives that reported to me, and then monthly amazing dream and developmental conversations. And it was like I did not miss them. Like I find a
Mm,
lot of leaders, if business calls, it's like that's the first thing to go. Like they'll be like, "Can we get
mm,
back to that on Monday?" And it just completely dilutes your message that I care about you and your development. Like your
yeah.
boss or the person you mentioned, and same with my boss. Like she never canceled a status with me, and I would even have like super senior leaders all of a sudden fly in and they're at my building. I'm like, okay, I'll be out. I'm finishing my status. And do you know how important that made my executive feel that I was going to finish my conversation and not like sweat it out and run out to the senior leader that was flowing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Flowing in. And so I
Well,
think
it's such a amount of respect for the person in front of you,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So, but being predictable and frequent is how it really starts becoming a culture, I believe, too.
Yeah. But this is where I think some people, I remember when I was doing more dream team architect type of work and more of that chief of staff capacity that I've held in the past, where people underestimate how much people management takes in time
Yes.
to do it properly. Because that's, I think people are like, I don't like managing people, or I don't, like they fight it back. It's because I don't like the time output that it
Yeah.
requires to be a available, predictable, consistent leader.
Yes.
And it does. It requires an enormous amount of time and patience. Because if even if you're meeting with your direct reports once a week, or you're doing skip levels, or you're doing all these things, like when you amass and count up all of that, like meeting time or talk time, how much time do you think a leader should be in that role versus in, I don't want to call it admin, but in like doing
Mhm.
or forecasting and planning, and you know what I mean? Like how do you like, do you find that there's a good number that is good for the organization to carry it forward, so you're not just people man, you're not just a therapist on site?
Yeah. I think actually what happens though, in terms of your question, like the percentage of time, I would say at least a third of my time to have some time was people oriented. Like,
Yeah.
when I would say I work for Target, I really felt like I work for my team. Like
Yeah.
I'm a people leader. And I mean, I still hopped on and could bring people out and I could stock shelf. I'm a hands-on and want to be right by the team, but it doesn't seem very overwhelming when you schedule it though. Like, like we schedule our yoga classes or we schedule our kids' game
Sure.
schedules or whatever. Like if you use your planner as your weapon to make sure these things happen, it doesn't seem overwhelming, but I think that can be the miss. And unless you plan it out, you can't say your boundaries get really blurry so that if I say, like if my boss says, "Can we talk at this time?" I can easily say, "Oh no, I have a status from 10 to 11, but I can meet with you at 11:30." So I think just the scheduling point makes it seem not as much of a time commitment as it feels sometimes. And then
Sure.
the second piece of it is I developed and empowered my leaders below. There's definitely different layers of leadership in a Target store. They all, like, I didn't handle a lot of the things because my lower level leaders did such an amazing job of fostering the same culture with their own teams. It
Yeah.
really got to me too,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. Yeah,
And so it took
100%.
like 3 months to really kind of inject this and really have it flowing, but it
Yeah.
works. And it's really,
Well, and I
yeah,
would say you appear to me to be an individual who gains energy
yeah,
from those type of
yeah,
interactions as opposed to a depletion.
yes.
But if you're, I mean, if you're fostering this level of proactivity and team centricness, then like you're also not every time do you meet are you just like thrown into the fire hydrant of
Oh,
issues
absolutely.
and problems,
Yeah.
right? Like it is, there's ideating and dreaming. And
Yes.
again, that's very life giving of an energy when you're doing that and fostering that type of behavior. So I can see why you would even look forward to those
Yeah.
meetings versus sometimes having them with the higher ups.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, you were there for 21 years and then you
Yeah.
left. I would imagine that you went through an identity crisis because you were like, Target, you bled Target,
Mhm.
and then you left. And not, again, doesn't necessarily have to be a divorce of a type of
Mhm.
feeling, but like you were this person for so
I
long
know.
and now you're defined by yourself. Walk me through that little bit of your identity evolution.
Yes. I will say I started kind of breaking up with my Target identity before I actually left
Sure.
because I had this like swirling in my belly for some time. And I had, like I told you, I mean, briefly in my upper 30s, I'll just share, I went through this hard time where my identity was all Target, meaning like I was skimping at my time at home too much. I wasn't always serving myself the best. And it did lead to this brief time where I feel like the Lord intervened and I got
Sure.
anxiety and had panic attacks. And I realized I needed to untangle this worth and identity from being all Target because I did love, to your point, like what I was doing and it did give me energy. And my husband is like so caring and he was never going to be the one to slow me down because he thought I was like thriving type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in that journey of like redefining what my identity was, which I wanted it to be more balanced, um, I started like sharing that story and I just started attracting tons of Target professionals. And I still have a lot of Target clients, of course, um, because it was a great place to work. It wasn't Target's fault, but I conformed so much of my life to just be an
Mm-hmm.
achiever. And as a high achiever, it's hard to detach from achievement and outcome and
Yeah.
all that. So, anyway, through that journey, I realized I want to be present with my children and um, be seen as not just, I mean, literally everywhere we went, people knew me as the Target lady. It's really true, actually. And I always had red on, and it just didn't stop. But it was really neat too, like I said before, I fully went on my own. And still in my office at home, they made me a Target jersey and it says like 21 on the
Oh.
back is the number. And like, they did
Oh.
so many special things. So I still look at it each day and I'm so proud of it. But now I feel like I'm using this like power and purpose that I feel like I was given to by the Lord a little bit to influence and make a bigger impact. And quite frankly, I want to hit like worldwide because I just see the need for this so much.
Yeah.
And it's pretty universal in terms of like
Yeah.
it. I've been helping small businesses, big businesses, and also colleges lately. And people are really hungry to feel empowered as leaders and also feel like that they can breathe at home and be present and all that too. So I think working on the identity breakup before I actually left helped be a smoother transition.
So this is actually, I'm glad that you brought this up worldwide. Um, I had this like right before we turned on record, I was kind of like getting mad by myself in my room. I don't know, but like it happens all the time. And I was like, it's really interesting to me that there are leadership issues have not, I feel like they're still so prevalent, so
Mhm.
everywhere,
Mhm.
which is why they hire humans like you, which is why you have the Brene Browns and the Adam Grants and the Simon Sinek's. But I'm like, but hold on a minute. Start with why and vulnerability and all that shit has been around forever.
Yeah.
And yet, why does leadership still feel like it's not gotten better? Why do you think there is such a crisis when it comes to good leadership?
I think I think what my like I share what happened to me is happening all the time, and top leaders are struggling silently
Mm, mm-hmm,
because they've achieved these big roles and they have their families and they have the income and they have a home and community, but there's this like void feeling
mm-hmm,
because they've, I believe, similar to I feel like my journey and what I'm learning as I help top level leaders, because I work with people one on one that relate to my story so much, that they too just lost themselves in their career. And it's really wild how it happens like unintentionally. It's not like
mm-hmm.
we set out for these things. But then, as you can imagine, I wasn't my most confident self as a leader in that little pocket of time. And I was feeling very vulnerable that I wasn't doing good enough in all these areas and all these things. And so, as you can imagine, I wasn't feeling really powerful as I was giving feedback because I was struggling myself. And then this just happens, and it, like, unless you have the knowledge, for me, I got involved with a mindset coach, and that also helped me untangle the situation I was in. But a lot of people have never worked with any help. Like they're just,
True.
and we're all high achievers if you're in these roles. Like we don't want to admit we need help sometimes. And so I
Touche.
think it just starts all these things compile and it gets us to these really fragile spots where it's impacting our home life, our personal self esteem, and then also our leadership quality, to be honest.
Mm.
So
So you feel like part of this leadership epidemic is like the silent
I think so.
struggle, the silent strife individually,
And
right?
I share that story on stage often, just briefly. And it's wild at times. I get like a knot in my throat because I literally can go back to driving to work feeling like a brick was on my chest and I did not know what was wrong with me. And
Mm-hmm.
the people that stay after and wait in the line to talk to me, they're like, I feel like you were talking to me because I'm there right now.
They're in it.
Yes.
They're in it.
And so I think sometimes
Mm.
my brand is actually my story because it's I'm really open to being vulnerable because I feel like it happened to serve in a higher way and I want to help that.
Yeah. What do you feel like people can do? Like, what's the next best step? Like, what's that gr- in your counsel? What would be that next? Not I want to say easy, but it's like it's doable. It is there. It's a little bit within our grasp. What would be that next best step if we wanted, if there was an individual listening that wanted to work on their leadership abilities?
Hmm. Um, well, well, I would love to work with them, of course, but I love to help everyone kind of come back home to themselves. And I think finding someone in your life that you can do that with, whether it's a coach, a therapist, a friend, someone that you know will push you, but also, you know, not console you, but support you through the shift. But I think just talking about it more. And I will be honest, when I got over the fact that I was feeling this way and started sharing it with my leaders at Target and even my ones that reported to me, our connection like skyrocketed. And so I think just having conversations more often and finding someone that can kind of help bring you back home to you will help you continue to learn how to crush your career goals, but also feel fulfilled and
Mm,
dream and be present and not have your worth be tied up in
yeah,
your career and your
yeah.
achievements.
So not be, make a bold decision to not be silent,
Yes.
right?
I mean, I really wanted to like admit it to my husband a little bit, and even though he's like the most loving person in my life, it's so hard, I think, as leaders and high achievers to ask for help.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. Well, because so much is we carry such a mantle
Mhm.
of responsibility
Yes.
for everyone in our lives. They count on us. And so what happens when the person that's counted on needs to count on
Yeah.
someone, right?
Yes.
Okay, we do this fun thing on the podcast where maybe I'm addicted to this at this point. I don't know. I kind of like to have you ask me something that I didn't know was coming. So I actually like it when the guest gets to ask me, the host, I guess, a question of their choosing to kind of like conclude our awesome talk.
Okay, fun. Well, in the spirit of all this leadership conversation and watching you and learning more about you and the team, I love how you always are talking about your team and all that you're accomplishing together. How do you help your team feel appreciated, accountable, and fulfilled as you are continuing to do these amazing big endeavors and include
Yeah.
them in the journey?
Um, it depends on the person,
Sharon, that's smart too.
right? I think everybody feels love differently or receives love.
Yes.
This is like very love languages, but like I do think that people need different things at different times. And so there is like the generic, hey, on the day of the book launch, let me send out some flowers.
Oh, I love it.
There's those gestures that like, or one my marketing coordinator had a we thought we could upload all of the pre-orders in a bulk import. We were told we could, and we discovered we couldn't. So she had to manually put in hundreds of orders. And so she said on a call once, she's like, I'm gonna go to Starbucks and like just get drunk off like coffee. And so I'm like, oh, I can get her Starbucks gift card. So like sometimes I'll hear them verbally express like their desire to go get something. And I'm
Love
like,
it.
oh, I got it, right? I can
Yeah.
get it for you. Um, I have my actually I shouldn't disclose who, but there's somebody on the team right now who is, I mean, instrumental in the group. And she's having a personal family situation where a family member lost like custody of her kids for a minute. And so she found herself, her and her husband, with like a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old in like a blink of an eye. And I'm like, well, I know what it is to have two boys. You do. I mean, like, we know what it is to
Yeah.
have boys. And I'm thinking about my 8-year-old and my 10-year-old and like what they were like at 2 and 3. I'm like, oh my gosh, the physicality. And her husband is now going back into a workplace. And so she's like, at
Yeah.
home with these like just, I mean, the energy and the physicality of a 2 and a 3-year-old man cub, because they're just like half animals at that point, right? Like, and so I just started shipping her on Amazon, like all of my boys' favorite things at that age
Mm-hmm.
to keep them to the best of their ability to self entertain. So, like magnetic
Oh,
tiles or the
good
big
job.
blocks
Yeah,
or like a little indoor trampoline, like, or those like activity books so they can do
that's so
different things with each
nice.
page. So, like, but then I have another person where I'm like, I wanted to gift her a massage, and she's like, honestly, I just need the cash. And I'm like, here, take the okay. Like,
Aw, yeah,
so I do have an open relationship with them, like where I'm like, I want to spoil you. You're not letting me spoil you. Either I'm gonna hunt you down and figure out what your address is or what your favorite restaurant is, or you can
yeah.
just tell me. Sometimes I'll have like a little cheat sheet of my people's favorite anythings. Like I know they love Target, or I know they love this or that. But it is, I think it is so different
Mm-hmm.
because some people love gifts, other people are completely in the affirmation
Yeah,
category, other people are just like serve me because I'm like drowning. So it just
sure.
depends. But I do try, but you know what is freaking reciprocated for my birthday? They had I can't they found people that I worked with like 12 years ago, and they compiled this montage
Oh,
of 30-second clips of everybody saying happy birthday in
oh,
my personal life, my professional life, and my corporate life, and my entrepreneur life. Like I was clients, like I was like every face that popped up in this montage, I was like, holy crap, how'd you get that person that? And I just started crying. And then my parents were in it. And I just started, my husband, and I mean, like, I just started crying and crying. So, like, it goes both
oh,
ways. And they know it's because words of affirmation are my love language.
yes.
So they just gave me this montage of
I
affirmations,
love that.
and that's what I mean is like, I have the best team in the world, and we it's very intentional. And I think to your point, it's effort. We try to love each other. We
Mhm.
want to love on each
I
other.
love it. And I love the point about leading them as individuals, not just this
Mhm.
one.
Sweeping gesture. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Well, good
Yeah,
job.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and that just takes time, and it takes, again, like you said, time, intentionality, effort, but it's a joy. Like
Yeah.
those are the cool things. That's the cool thing about, I think, relationships, the reciprocity is just baked in. Like it just, you give and then you receive and then you give and then you receive. And that's when you're on a team like that, you're constantly being fed and you feel like you are needed because you're also giving. And that's the cool thing. Like you never want to not be in a helper position, but it's also good to be in a helpy
Yeah.
position. So that only happens with good teams, I think.
Yes, I agree. Well, so great.
Megan, you're just like, that's so fun. That's so cool that your team, like if I were you, you know how like Ted Lasso has like that yellow crooked believe?
Yeah.
You should do it in hot pink or your signature color and then do believe or do whatever word is like your word.
Yes.
And then, but you can like, oh, I would play, if people already call you Ted Lasso, I would play with that all day
Well,
long.
I'm like itching to when we're done, I'm gonna write all this down so I do not forget,
It's
and
so
thanks for gonna
good.
help me.
It's so good. Like to put it to incorporate it in your workshop to like I think it's so cool that that's what you're known for. You can be introduced on stage that way,
Yeah.
like the Ted Lasso of the leadership world. Like that would oh gosh, that would be so again, that's sticky, that's like rememberable as a marketing perspective. Anyways,
Yeah.
you didn't come here for marketing advice, but I adore you.
Thank you.
I'm behind you. I think
Thank
what
you.
the work that you do is so freaking necessary and it's not easy. Being in the business of relationship is hard and I'm really grateful for people who do it. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, good. This was such a fun conversation.
Thanks for listening today. If you've loved what you heard, make sure to rate the show, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us get the Rainmaker podcast in front of more passionate marketers just like you. And if you're ready to transform your marketing from buy this to be this, pick up my new identity marketing book available on my website at veronicarami.com. Until next time, my friends, keep making it rain.